finally got the calendar figured out. Edition of the MSP Initiative. Today we have Colin Knox of Passportal and SolarWinds. I say Passportal because obviously he's known for that, but SolarWinds MSP. Colin, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm doing awesome. Congratulations on figuring out the calendar.
I lost track for a while. I did. I'm not gonna lie.
It's that COVID brain. You forget what day it is all the time.
When every day is like, Tom and Jerry running across the screen. I mean, you just forget. But no, it is Tuesday, which is good. And you are located where?
I am in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Friendly North.
The friendly North. And how are things in your neck of the woods?
Things are good. We finally are starting to see signs of summer. It's bright behind me, so I guess we can come out of our igloos for the next 6 weeks and enjoy some nicer, warmer weather. And hopefully, actually, we have a decent season because it sucks to be cooped up. But things overall are good, man. We're doing what we can to flatten the curve up here and stuff. We're seeing a little bit of a rebound in cases locally here. And so we've got the mandatory mask order goes live August 1st for our city anyways. And then a bunch of the other cities are starting to do the same thing.
Was it optional before?
Yeah, it was optional before. Some stores had the thing where you have to wear a mask when you go in. But yeah, for Calgary now, starting this weekend, you can't be in any public place without a mask on. So, so outside of your home, really, for the most part, or your vehicles. So hopefully that does help flatten the curve. It's one of those things that, if it helps and we can get rid of this and get back to real life, then let's do it. So.
No, fair enough. No, I mean, obviously Canada kind of was in line there with the U.S. and then there was kind of like a little bit of a divergence. So good to hear that things are a little bit in a better position, it seems like. And, I was talking to your old friend Dan Wensley, last week, Tuesday, I think. And he actually educated me that you can fly over the border. You just can't drive over the border.
Yeah, I think it's ground access. Is not open right now, but for certain reasons they'll let you fly in and do what you need to do.
Interesting. Well, listen, as long as you can actually get where you got to go, I guess in the end, that's good. So we were talking just before this call about a few different things, but before we get the wheels kind of burning, why don't you take the time to kind of intro yourself, right? I mean, you've kind of taken a cool journey through MSP IT land, and I don't know if everybody's familiar with that. So like your professional journey, if you would.
Sure. How much time do we have?
We have plenty of time.
Take a while. No, you know what? The short version is I was an IT administrator for a global IT services, not IT service, a global oil and gas services business, and was kind of getting stalwarted in that business. And so I stepped out and joined what became the first IT provider I ever worked for, a small 4-person outfit, and started life as an IT consultant. And so over the course of the next about 10 years, I worked for 3 IT providers / MSPs in varying roles, growing up to running the service operations for a mid-sized player in Calgary here. After a while, I kind of got the bug and figured that I think I could do things better. And some of the ideas that weren't being so favorably adopted inside their business by the ownership, I figured I'd give things a shot myself. So started up an MSP. They found out and fired me, which is completely fine. But did a business partnership in that, learned that business partnership can be a lot harder if you don't properly qualify your business partners in advance. So that business, we ended up splitting about 9 or 10 months into it. And so I started my 1-person shop MSP called Excel Professional Services back in 2009 and drove that for 5 years. We grew that pretty quickly to a 4 million revenue business. And then over the course of that company, and as it was growing and shifting and evolving, recognized a key need to better manage privileged passwords for our clients and getting our technicians proper audited access to those credentials as part of what we did. So founded Passportal as a shoot off from the MSP. And in 2014, I left that MSP, hired a president. Actually, odd fact, I hired the president that fired me from my previous MSP that I worked at to be the president at my MSP. So he took over leading that company for 18 months while I focused and turned full focus on Passportal. Sold the MSP in 2016, and as most of the market knows, sold Passportal in April of last year to SolarWinds. And now I sit here as a SolarWinds executive, heading up community engagement and leading this function for industry outreach, partner experience, and community engagement.
Awesome. Well, that is a very cool journey, because one piece or another, I think a lot of people have experienced. Before we get into like current times and pull some of your thoughts in, I'm really curious to see, like, so now you went through two different transactions, right? You went through selling your MSP, you went through selling your software company.
Yeah.
Was there any similarity to either of those two situations? And if you were to go back and do it all over again, what are the things that people should be aware of when you're in the position to actually pull a trigger?
Sure. So I'll give a plug for some old material that Channel E2E did. So Joe, we got coverage about the MSP sale when it happened, and then we did a 1 year after retrospective on the deal that he's got. So you can look that up. But yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities with any business that you're doing. And I think we took a lot of lessons learned from the first sale and applied it to the second sale. The one thing that resonates true when it comes to overall business valuation, regardless, is the growth rate of your business as a sustainable factor weighs heavily on your valuation. The customer retention weighs heavily on that. The confidence in the acquirer as to what they are acquiring and their ability to continue its success by retaining employees also becomes a critical factor. I think some of the similarities is that regardless of what you're selling as a business, the type or industry that you're in, the due diligence completely sucks to go through. Because it is a grueling process, and there is no fast, short way to get through that. It is just a quick, it takes up all of your time. And if you think you're working 12, 15, 20-hour days now, it's like you live 3 years in the course of, 3 weeks going that way. So, yeah, I think that is what it is. But at the end of it all, if you persist through the process and drive forward and really are motivated and see the benefit in the sale and what it can mean for whether it's your legacy, the continuance of what you built, or what your life could be like afterwards, it is very much worthwhile along the way there. So.
I mean, approximately how long, beginning to end, does the process take? I've heard a year. I've heard 6 months is too fast. I don't know. Everybody has a different answer there.
So, I mean, there's when we did the exit of the MSP, we were in exclusivity and did, I want to say it was close to 3 months of due diligence. Now an MSP exit's a little bit different because your factors of I guess influence of what they're buying really is the people in the contracts. And I think most people know this, but you can't buy people. So you need to convince them to stay. So the due diligence that we went through for that was not, I wouldn't say heavier, but I think it was a lot more thorough when it came to the evaluation of the contracts and the level of confidence that they had in it. So that was a 3-month due diligence process. With Passportal, we, from point of entering exclusivity with SolarWinds, I want to say it was 6 weeks we wrapped up. Now, from a timing perspective, and I think the thing that led the most to us being able to streamline that was we were in the process of raising a Series A fundraise at the time to accelerate our business and take things forward and to the next level. So we had already put together a full virtual data room. We had been having very high level conversations and some initial due diligence with venture capital firms. We had narratives across every angle of the business. So we had pretty much everything ready that as SolarWinds was asking for information, and even some of the other companies that were looking at us, we already had it. So we didn't have to go compile it and hand it off and then answer a bunch of questions that way. So it was fairly good. And we had an amazing CFO who ran our business very diligently, from corporate governance and structure and everything else. So yeah, very fortunate for that.
It sounded like you had your homework done, ready to go before you turned the ignition. So that always helps.
Yeah.
Did you have outside help doing all of that, or is that largely internal effort?
So on the MSP deal, we had we didn't have any broker. We didn't have any professional, like we hired a lawyer seemingly off the streets, but we hired a lawyer, got the job done, and went through the deal. We did work with, advisors on the Passportal deal, given that it was substantially different than our MSP exit. So we did that. But I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the detail and information that's going to come out of your business has to come from you and your leadership team. The advisors definitely did the data manipulation and structure and positioning and everything else for us, but we had to get the raw information and provide all the insights. So
understand. Well, that's very, very intriguing. So for anybody that's watching, go back to channelede.com, look up the, just type in Kyle Knox, I'm sure, and you can see the post-sale, post-transaction interviews, which probably lead some more context into this. But I appreciate that background information, because I think a lot of people have heard that, M&A has obviously been happening for a long time. It seems to be, or at least if you've heard the same, this is what I'm hearing, that that has accelerated with COVID, or during, after, whatever you want to call it, time frame this past 6 months. So it seems like people who had 2-3 year timelines in the money side of the equation, right, the PEs, the VCs, what have you, have like cut their timetables in half, I'm hearing. So it's very interesting to see how much money is out there on the street, kind of thing.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, and maybe somebody with more broad insight to the deals that are happening, transactions, be interested to see what valuations are doing. If this is a, private equity funding or larger companies getting just really good deals because of an anticipated down market and potential recession here, and people looking to get out and take money off the table while there's an opportunity to. Or if it is still strategic acquisition values happening and people are seeing healthy returns.
No, absolutely. So let's zoom backwards and put the thinking cap on and talk about, hey, you were an engineer, you started an MSP, you sold an MSP, you now work with MSPs for 5-6 years. So clearly, from the time that you started in the industry till now, a lot more software is available, a lot more automation's available, a lot more cloud exists. I'm curious, if I told you 6 to 8 months ago, right? Like Q4 2019, for lack of a better term, if you were to restart an MSP, start ground zero all over again, what would you have started with differently than the one that you ended up selling?
That's a good question. So I think if you look at the advent of what's happened with technology over the last several years, especially since I owned and operated an MSP, and I think the importance of how technology can be leveraged in business now, I think I would have had a much stricter focus on, we'll call it, practice areas inside the business. So in the MSP, we already had a strong focus on security. I think we would have with a new one had again a strong focus on that. But I think we would have also, or I would have a very a strong focus and a practice built around business advisory. And that's not just VCIO type stuff, but overall the technology ways that people should be able to advance their own business and find their strategic advantages over competition. So one thing I'd highlight right now, so you say 6 or 7 months ago, I was saying for a good while before this whole pandemic hit that a lot of vendors had almost done a disservice to MSPs and even their clients by framing the BDR world and backup world as business continuity. And it is business continuity, but it's only a facet of business continuity. It's not complete business continuity. And so I think that's an area where there is a lot of ripe opportunity, especially now, because nothing drives opportunity like crisis and companies feeling a pain that can now be solved for them. So I think, having an advisory service around evaluating a business, understanding their business model, how they operate, where they operate, how they interact with their clients and prospects, how they target their prospects, gives a wealth of opportunity across, digital demand generation that you can do and helping people traverse the internet marketing engine that exists, helping them traverse, collaborative tools and solutions, realizing now that the world is your oyster for hiring. You no longer need to isolate down to, okay, we're only hiring in this region. And so helping spurn better collaboration and communication intra-organizationally and intra as well. I mean, how many times as an MSP and even people that have dealt with MSPs did they say, I don't think anybody talks to each other in that business. Like, I talked to Cheryl and I told her exactly what the plan was. And now John's calling me asking what the plan is. Like, there's a reason she's the single point of contact, right? So helping them improve communication internally, helping them improve their ability to work as a team is an opportunity. Looking at crisis response strategies, and that's not just your data has been taken for ransom or corrupted or deleted or whatever else happened. It's you cannot go into your office anymore. Your office is offline indefinitely. You look at other tragic things that could happen where multiple staff or key staff are no longer available to you, right? So when it comes to helping them understand methods that they can protect knowledge within their business, helping them understand how they can collaborate within their business, remotely access technologies, how they can quickly repurpose things. I think there's a whole lot of opportunity around that and solidifying yourselves as a business partner versus just being the IT providers. And I think that's going to have to be more of the evolution regardless, because you're seeing the millennial and what do they call them? Zennial, Gen X, like Gen X and Gen Z and whatever else that's coming up. These are all very computer literate people. Like they were born with a keyboard in front of them, right? So their ability to master Google Foo probably outpaces any of us aging people that have been in IT forever, right? So they have an ability to troubleshoot things. Like hell, when my one kid was 3 years old, she was figuring out everything on the iPad and iPhone and other stuff more than I was like, how the heck did you do that, right? Like their aptitude to learn technology and figure out settings and products and programs and everything else is, light years beyond what the traditional end users had been before. So finding ways to not just support, set up, and maintain technology, but teaching them and opening their eyes to other ways that technology can be leveraged, introducing them to technologies that maybe they didn't know existed, piecing and pairing all of that together. That's really going to be the opportunity to drive value.
No, it's really great feedback, because I think sometimes people just get too stuck into the technology speak and they're not talking about business. I would hope that now that COVID has hit, and we're hopefully matriculating through this time, that people have spent time to actually talk business with their end customers, right? Like, had
Yeah.
you been in business as an MSP, or I'm sure you've talked to MSPs and who are actively in business, but even yourself, right? If you could put that hat on, what would you like? A lot of the people position themselves from a COVID standpoint was, hey, pick up the phone, talk to your customers, understand their challenges, talk about the plan, because it's all in flux, right?
Yeah.
How would you have handled that whole crisis from an MSP standpoint?
So I think a lot of what comes down, so I think for years and years, everybody's been focused on figuring out what their differentiator is, right? What's your strategic advantage? You have, the brilliant minds like Gary Pica for years of saying, like, what's your special sauce? You need to have your differentiators. And when you look at the world today with how many companies and software providers there are, every MSP is just using a different flavor of the same tool, right? And we've got the same foundational tool set, whether it's for remotely monitoring, whether it's for how we back up and can recover, whether it's how we manage and automatically escalate tickets through workflows and ease of that stuff. And so I think a big part of it in the differentiation is going to come down to experience. And we're seeing an acceleration in the world of the value of customer experience, not customer service, right? And you're seeing statistics now that I want to say 84% of consumers out there, both business and individuals, are now viewing the experience that I have with your business at complete parity with the value of the actual service you're delivering to me and that I'm buying from you. So
Really?
it's no longer, and research. So Tiffany Bova did an amazing presentation out at a conference at the beginning of this year, talking about it. And I can't remember which research outfit it was based out of. But by the year 2022, the estimate is that 100% of people will see full parity between the experience they have and the value of the product or service they're purchasing. So if that doesn't tell you that having the best technical minds isn't going to be what wins the battle at the end of the day, I don't know what would, because you need to have that breadth of service. You need to have that breadth of technical aptitude, and you'll need to have that breadth of the human aspect of it, right? How fast can you respond? What's your experience like when you're in a quarterly business review? How do they understand and perceive the value? How are you invoicing and billing your customers? Is that simplified so that experience is smooth? It's every possible little interaction that they have with your business. So I think.
So would you based on what you just said, that by 2022, I mean, we're a year and a half out of that or less, if customer experience is so high on the, hey, I'm buying your service or continuing with your service, whatever it is, right? Managed services, software, accounting, whatever it may be. But obviously for managed services, do you double down on account management? Do you install somebody in the role of chief experience officer? Like, how do you get to that, to that high bar now, right? How do MSPs, pivot to fix that concern?
Yeah, so I think absolutely you need a champion inside your organization for customer experience, hands down. Now, the caveat to that is in the keyword champion. The customer experience is not a single person's job, nor do they own it, and they're the only person. It is a company-wide initiative, and it's everybody is involved. That takes obviously a ton of executive support and ownership support. But ultimately, it's having somebody that champions, making sure that the focus and every decision that you make has the customer at the center of it. Mm-hmm. All the programs you offer, the promotions, the services you deliver, everything else has to have the customer at the center, right? And when you're looking at that, I would say, probably for most MSPs, that's going to be the owner or the president. You need to make that your initiative. You need to make that your mantra. and putting together a customer advisory board. I think that was one of probably the smartest things we ever did, both in our MSP as well as at Passportal, because you can talk to your customers all the time, you can talk to your clients all the time, but you don't necessarily get that same level of feedback. And so being able to pull those people together and show the trust you have for them. Because if there's one thing that impacts customer experience, it's actually trust. When people feel they can trust you, it takes the whole relationship to the next level, right? And so you showing a point of vulnerability in inviting them in, showing how much you value and trust their advice and feedback and how much you trust their opinion, going and acting on that, proving that you trusted their opinion, having them understand and see that maybe you don't know everything about your business and you're looking for that help, that helps open them up as well. So I would say, make sure that there's somebody that's a champion, focus on building that trust. And a good place to start with that is having a customer advisory board. I mean, you can go all the way to the Amazon method, which, and there's a lot of articles and even books written about how they've approached it. But if you don't know this, every single meeting that happens in Amazon, they only have enough chairs in the boardroom for the amount of attendees that will be there, plus one. And they wheel all the other chairs out of the boardroom. So if it's only 4 people in that meeting, there's 5 chairs. And that one chair sits at the head of the table and that stays empty, and that's to represent the customer. So that at all times in every meeting that they're having, there's that recognition that the customer is in there at that meeting too. So, I mean, there's a whole level of the spectrum where you can take that stuff, but I think that's huge. I think the next place I would focus is so heavily on employee engagement, right? Because you've got this situation where, by and large, in most cases, especially in a service-oriented business, your biggest expense is your people. And the cost to recruit, replace, lock out after termination is substantial. So retaining your staff is huge and is key, but not just retaining that, having them engaged so that they are actually happy and passionate about the business and feel vested and connected and like they're part of something. Because the better service that they do, the happier that they are, the happier customers are going to be, and the happier your wallet's going to be as an owner, right? And so I think those are the key areas where you can really focus and then make investments that will drive, benefit and impact.
No, I mean, listen, this is great advice. So I take away customer advisory panel, which you never really hear at the MSP level. You hear it at the vendor level all the time. But I wonder how many MSPs have actually gone that way. I'm sure single digits, if I had to guess. 2, internal customer experience champion, which I feel like in small businesses, a lot of people wear a lot of hats, but I feel like this is something that you almost need to work at, right? Like make it a priority or else it'll never get done. And then to your point, Brent actually chimes in here and says, what do you do to keep employees happy? It's not just all about money, right? I mean,
absolutely. It's actually less often about money. There's certain roles where money is the big driver, but it is not about money. It's ultimately, I think you need to understand your staff and understand what motivates them, what inspires them, what drives them. Why do they get up to come into work every day? What do they want to achieve over the next several years? I mean, driving employee engagement could be anything from investing in their own education. So we had, I can't remember now. I want to say it was between $5,000 and $7,000 annual training program that we would offer to our staff. So they could go out and choose anything in the realm of IT. Like, we weren't going to pay for people to take some crocheting class, but we would pay, let's call it $5,000 for online training. If they wanted to go out and take real live in-person Microsoft course, anything else that it was, to drive them forward, help advance their level within their career, right? So that was one thing. And then we would actually bonus them based on achieving certification. So that had two things. One, they got to be better at their careers. They got certified. They were more proud of who they were. They felt they were more marketable, and they were. So then we in turn would go out and market how certified we were. I mean, we were a SonicWall shop. We did a lot of that stuff. I want to say half of our technical team was master SonicWall certified administrators. One benefit, we had direct access to like tier 3 support with SonicWall. But two, we started getting enterprise level introductions from SonicWall because we had almost the only master certified people in our region, if not half of the country, at that time. So the opportunities that came forward were awesome. And then our techs were thrilled with some of the stuff that they got to play with from an enterprise tech standpoint. So, I mean, you've got things like that. You've got, mentoring people and helping them actually advance in their career and showing advancement opportunities within your organization. Now, realize that a lot of people say, hey, in the next 3 years, I want to be a manager. I want to be an executive, whatever. And that's just solely built on what society has almost ingrained in them, that advancement means becoming a manager. And it's not actually what they want to do. And in a lot of cases, a lot of people aren't fit to lead people, but they can be the most senior specialized engineer or person, whatever role that they have to offer. So showing methods of advancing their careers, showing advancement opportunities within your organization. Sometimes it comes down to what their social, charitable connections are, right? Giving them time during the week or over the course of the year where they can go and volunteer for charitable organizations, where you can bring money into it, but maybe not money in their pockets, but do a charitable donation matching program with your staff. Invest in their retirement. Again, money based, but not in the immediate. Do a 401k matching program with them. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. The next is just that play hard, work hard mentality, right? Work hard, do a lot of things, but then have a lot of fun with it. In our MSP, we had a full massage room with this huge, crazy, it was a bonkers massage machine. And it was just the staff had access to it. We did have a couple times where people fell asleep in there and the door was locked and we had no idea, but we never lost employees. Up until I left the daily operations of the business, we had lost one client in 5 years. Wow. And that's the type of stuff that drove retention. And we just continued to steal market share because our people were so passionate. They were so bought into what we were building. And I think that's just a myriad of ways that you can approach it.
No, I mean, there's a lot of good advice. I've never heard of the massage room, but hey, it works. So, let's pivot to another area. I'm just out of curiosity. So, did you take a page out of the precious metals book, bronze, gold, silver? Did you have a portion of your business that was project break fix versus managed services? If during, depending on that answer, how would you have flexed during COVID time? Would you have deferred payments, add time onto the back of the agreement? Did you agree in the long-term 3-5 year thing? I'm just curious from a business modeling standpoint.
So we had a few practice areas inside the organization. So we had professional services, which was our projects. Typically, we did those flat rate. Very seldom we would do a T&M type project. And we had dedicated leadership for that practice, and we had dedicated staff for that practice. So the technicians who, as they elevated their skill set, always said that, wouldn't it be amazing if you could just build something, put it together, and never have to talk to that client again? We were like, do we have a job for you? And that was awesome, because then also by segregating our managed services team from our professional services team, when the professional services team was on site doing a data migration or a network consolidation project, they had full realm, and the clients began to quickly understand, I can't run in and say, hey, Outlook keeps crashing, can you come help me? That's not what I do. I'm on a completely different team. You're going to have to go and submit a ticket and the team will jump on that for you. So we had those two things. Now, what we did do, we did not do the precious metals offering. What we did was we had a full top, like this is our managed services offering, and it is, I wouldn't say all inclusive, but very inclusive from a managed services standpoint, right? Where we had they bundled in the standardization, some of the stuff that we had to do. We did a little bit of HAS, but not an awful lot. The company that acquired us, they nailed HAS on the head, and that was a beautiful pairing when some of our stuff matched up. So we had the managed services offering, and then we staggered in two others. So not sure if I would keep it the same way or not. Again, I think I'd probably do some market validation with my customer advisory board on it, but we had our managed services offering, and then we had a business continuity offering. So we called it, I think it was called Recover 360. And so that was our backup practice, and that was all on its own. So we did dedicated marketing, demand generation, sales, strictly for that as well. We would do kind of cross-sell and offer that to our customers, but our contracts on managed services were held separate from our BDR offering, and then was also held separate from our security offerings.
It's very intriguing, right? Like, sorry to cut you off, and please continue when I'm done. But yeah, you actually like segmented departments within your MSP and like dedicated staff and walled them off to a degree. It's very intriguing.
Yeah, so we did do it that way. So for most of our clients, we actually had 3 independent contracts running, which was managed services, disaster recovery or backup, and security. So on the security side, we would do managed firewalls, the AV, mail security. I think maybe we bundled in mobile device management in that as well. So we kind of had all of those things fenced, and you didn't have to take them all from us. There were certain clients we went into or prospects and said, yeah, absolutely, we're not touching this unless you do our backup. Mm-hmm. But that's how we managed it. And the interesting thing that worked really well for us is we took on a bunch of mid-market clients, both standalone on our backup offering and or on our security offering, which eventually led to co-managed IT and kind of IT augmentation services that we offered, which again, then our professional services sat on the side. So we were fairly diverse. I mean, one of the other things that we were very focused on from day one, because the mid-sized MSP we worked at before was very heavily seated in the oil and gas market, which in Alberta where we are, you cannot escape that. But with every boom and bust that happened with oil, that company just, it was very difficult for them. So we essentially chose 4 verticals that we wanted to focus on. Oil and gas being an obvious one of those, but we focused on those verticals. We specialized on them, knew the line of business apps for those verticals, and used that to help diversify us so that when the recession was hitting strong hard back in 2009, 2010, we weren't as impacted. So we were fortunate that we did negotiate down on our contracts. Now we had a good margin on all of our contracts that we did. So when we did a 30% drop in contracts for our clients at that time, we were still profitable on them. So we maintained year over year, revenue stayed the same, profit I think doubled, and we continued to do well there. So I
assume you'd be in a probably similar position now via COVID then. I mean, granted, a lot of MSPs who, like, you know, I know I was just talking to a guy earlier today, dental, that was his vertical. Yeah. But dentists were shut down for 2 months.
Yeah.
So
I think yes and no, right? Like, I think there was the financial recession that happened, and even in the last oil collapse that happened in 2014, we did well there. But this is a little bit different, right? Like it totally shifted the way people had to work, and the in-person type businesses were cut off. So I think the biggest thing to focus on is making sure you've got that experience to help, you know, bridge that gap when it comes to the relationship that you've built with people. And I think, a famous term, like that term that came up that I was taught over the course of Passportal is this term BATNA, which sounds like EBITDA, right? But it's the best alternative to no agreement. And essentially what it comes down to is if you have a wealth of your clients coming up to you and approaching you for discounts or deferrals or pausing their agreements, you need to sit there and look at, like, is it optimal to either defer all of these payments? Can my cash flow manage it and all of that? But you need to look at if you're unamenable to any kind of flexibility in terms with them, what's the alternative? And the alternative could be that I'm just going to go find somebody else that will do that for me and help me with it. And so you need to think about what's the best alternative to that, while still keeping clients, still keeping some money coming in is what your best alternative is. And kind of recognizing that hopefully this is a short-term temporary situation where you can bridge that gap and then get back to the levels that you should be after. So.
I've never heard that term, but it makes total sense. I mean, there's got to be ebb and flow, right? There's balance in the world. So let me ask you a question, from the vendor side now, right? We've talked a lot about the MSP hat, but listen, both sides are still worth talking about. As a person now sitting on the vendor side, if your MSP comes to you and says, I need help, how does that conversation go?
So I think there's a number of ways to approach them, right? And you can't be one-track minded when it comes to solving any problem, much like we aren't when it comes to solving an IT problem. And so help can come in numerous forms. I think the default that a lot of people go to is money, right? Whether it's downgrade my contract, pause my contract, charge me less for my contract. And that becomes the default focus. Whereas there's other ways that you can help, introducing opportunities for new clients for them. So whether that's assisted demand generation, whether that's financial assistance in the form of marketing development funds in this time where a million business books have been written about the fact that crisis and downturns is the time when you double down on marketing investments, not slow down on them. So, I mean, there's help with that. There's providing access to industry experts and consultants that can help guide them through things. So a lot of the things we did at SolarWinds, was there was some financial assistance stuff that happened, but at the same time, there was a lot of the hiring consultants to help people walk them through and guide them through applications for PPP through the CARES Act, and guiding them with video tutorials, like, quick guides and checklists for their applications and stuff, just explaining how to navigate the entire world of government assistance. Upping and ramping up our investments in marketing development funds. Like in the last quarter, we gave out a record for SolarWinds on the amount of market development funds we've ever provided. So helping people with the marketing, we doubled down our own internal investments on partner enablement materials and resources to not just be like heavy marketing services, but showing and helping them prove value to their customers as well, saying, hey, here's a work from home, securing your work from home environment checklist. Make sure that you're doing all of these things. Here's things to do that way. Providing additional tools to them for no charge, like our remote access product, Take Control. We gave that free to partners for starting 90-day period, where, again, you think back to running the MSP, I didn't have agents on all of my customers or clients' home computers. I didn't have agents and remote work methodologies for them to remote into their office computers. So, we gave that out for free, and like tons of people jumped on that and used it a ridiculous amount. So we kind of took a multi-pronged approach to being able to drive assistance for our partners, so that it was about helping preserve their business and helping them find ways to grow their business and be best set to exit this situation when it does wrap up, than just going and saying, okay, here's a big discount, or here's a big deferral, or whatever. I mean, we did still do deferrals. We did, contract downgrades. We did some free licensing and stuff like that. But I would say the feedback we got from our partners was much more appreciated on the side of the consultants that we gave access to, the knowledge we gave access to, the additional support we provided to help get them through.
What do you tell, like, listen, I talk to a lot of MSPs all day long. I run into them all the time. I have people calling in saying, yeah, I bought this product 2 years ago. We've never gotten it off the ground, never onboarded,
Yeah.
right? What is the fundamental breakdown between the vendors and the MSPs, right? What is your advice to make that relationship stronger?
Is this from George Bardisi, the attendee, or the host of the show? It's
I'm giving you what from the hat of the MSP. Like, when I hear
man,
people, they bought stuff and they didn't turn it on for 2 years and they're still paying for it, I'm like, well, then why did you swipe? Like, what was the purpose?
No, it's a huge problem on the vendor side, as you know, right? Like it's all about finding ways to drive adoption, right? If somebody goes and buys, you need to absolutely shorten your time to perceived value. And the biggest way is to ensure that they've adopted it, right? So when you're approaching that as a managed service provider, there's a number of ways to go. So one thing that we would do often is our morning on kind of like day one of the onboarding with a client was just working hard, heads down, deploying agents, documenting things, getting all the information we needed. And then we would bring pizza in for lunch for the entire office and kind of bring them into whether they had a cafeteria, just a lunchroom, whatever kind of common area they had that could fit the whole team. And we actually delivered a full presentation to the entire company to explain to them, some background about who we were, introduce a few of the faces, not one or two of the faces for the organization. We would have actually the decision maker that made the decision to sign the contract with us. We would have them speak to why they chose us, why they made the change, what their expectations were of it. And then we set the stage of expectations too. We walked everybody through live. This is how you submit a support ticket. Here's how fast we will respond. Here's some of the things that we're putting in place. This is what you'll see. This is our schedule, so that we could make sure that everybody understood on this flat rate contracts, you don't need to be scared about contacting IT. You don't need to think that you need to talk to so-and-so in your office for them to corral and have all of the tickets before handing them off and judge what they're willing to pay for and not. So it was this whole open door access thing that we really drove. And yes, our first 3 months sometimes break even, sometimes not even profitable on a contract, because we wanted those quick wins. We wanted people to see that they could trust us, that they could bring things to us. And then that would teeter out after the fact, and we'd be insanely profitable on our contracts because people just had that confidence. And we overinvested in the first few months. So I think that is the way as an MSP to drive your early adoption and that time to perceive value. It's getting a win with almost every user and stakeholder in that business. When we approach it now with SolarWinds, so it's timely you ask this because we just announced a whole bunch of things, but we recognize that the breadth of our product portfolio was spanning, and we needed to find a way to standardize the onboarding process and experience across all of our partners and all of our products. So we've done that now, and we have a single team of onboarders who are all cross-trained on how to implement and configure and set up every one of our products. And so it doesn't matter if you're an existing partner buying another product or you're a new partner coming in with one or some of our products, you get the same onboarding experience and handhold to guide you through the product to make sure that it's configured properly for your organization. And most importantly, they tailor that experience to understand what are the outcomes that you are looking to drive, why you bought this product, so that we can make sure that we help you get to that desired outcome and drive it. So there's a lot of tactics that you can employ, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to get your hands dirty and jump in with the partners and get it done.
No, I mean, listen, that's good advice from both sides. I would argue that you could probably take pieces from both experiences and use them in both scenarios, right? But again, it comes back to the theme that you mentioned earlier in this call, which is customer experience, right? If that is the initial interaction between organization A and B, and it breaks down, then it's gonna be a rocky road, right, moving forward.
Absolutely.
Um,
But I think in line with that too, and it's funny because a lot of MSPs almost like I hear from a lot of MSPs that they tried quarterly business reviews, but then the clients stopped showing up, stopped responding, whatever else happened. And so it turned into the situation where the only time an MSP was calling or reaching out to their customer was either for collections or to sell them a new service. And that's not the best way to build a relationship. And if you think about the vendor world, how many times has your vendor, one of your vendor partners, called you and it's not been to sell you something? And so it's shifting that experience, and it's shifting even that expectation or assumption of what's going to happen. We introduced a whole team. I think we hired 40 people to be customer success managers now at SolarWinds. They're not salespeople. They have no quota, anything like that. And they were phoning people, and everybody assumed, oh, it's SolarWinds sales. Like, don't answer, get them off the phone. But the few that stayed on realized that it wasn't even a sales call at all. It was understanding what the biggest pressures were that they were facing. How can we help? Guiding them through some conversations they should be having with their own clients, and just trying to drive them in a way to be more successful in their business, and try to build that as a partner. So yeah, if there's one thing, start introducing some other calls where you're just calling to check in on your clients, and that it's not, hey, we've got this new email security offering, or hey, we've got this great new VoIP platform, or hey, a new backup. Make it just be like, how is your business doing, right? What's going on? Tell me, how do you feel things have been going with our relationship? Just so that it's not that hesitance to answer the phone, or hesitance to click even and read, because they know a lot of us get the read receipts or have the tracking bits pixels dropped, right? So
I'm gonna I'm gonna drop one on you, but obviously we have a limited time left. If you got the question from an MSP, what's your opinion? And again, I understand you where you're at, so I understand you may be specific in response. But do you feel that the influx of venture capital, PE money into the MSP vendor space, has that made things better? What's your opinion?
I do think it's made things better. I think in some cases it's made the experience for MSPs worse, and I understand and respect that as having been a former MSP. But here's why I think it makes it better. The IT channel has long been, I won't even say misunderstood, but not recognized by big business for a long time. We all know that there's been the enterprise tech companies, these major multi-billion-dollar orgs that come in and try and stuff enterprise and mid-market tech down our throats. It's not multi-tenant, it's not cross-platform, it's missing on a whole bunch of things that needs to happen for MSPs. Now, the reason that it's become better is private equity coming in and owning the majority of the majors now in our space. It actually drives more innovation. One, when people see consolidation, there are the people that take the negative perspective on it of, how's this going to impact my business? What's my experience going to be like? Oh, another one sells out. But the opportunists took a look at it and said, there's exit opportunity in this space now. And I'm going to see and look inside my business at things that I can innovate and build and drive, and be another MSP transition story that goes and know that there's an exit opportunity out there for one of these big companies or medium-sized players to acquire me, see a good financial gain and reward, and go on. Now, the venture capitalists are now cluing in on this. I mean, this year alone, my opinion, I don't have straight research, I have seen more Series A, Series B, and Series C venture capital investment announcements in the mid-sized players. You're looking at LionGuard and Huntress and Citricom and all these people that have raised money or done on different seed type investments. It's beyond anything I've ever seen before, right? And maybe people just didn't talk about it as much before, but I don't think that's the case. Venture capital is recognizing that typical venture capital plays are they're going to do anywhere between a 2 and a 5 year hold on a company or their stake in a company. And their expectation after that period is you're either exiting to a major organization for hopefully 10x their investment valuation, or you're going to IPO and they can see and realize an exit off of that, right? Well, their typical exits are to PE funded or direct PE firms, right? You look at Datto did that. You look at, I can't list, I guess, too many companies right now off the cuff, but that's what they're doing, right? Is the venture capital invests, holds and really fuels the growth financially for 2 to 5 years. And then they exit to PE owned or just straight PE firm. Now, when call it the 4 majors are all controlled or run by PE firms, that's heavy appetite for venture capitalists that want to come in, drop money, and know now that there's an exit opportunity because the PE firms see the span and reach that these MSPs and the global network can provide into the SMB market. So I think it's good because, one, it forces people to stay competitive in the majors and even in the mid-sized players. And 2, it drives innovation at the very early seed and conception stage, all the way up through funding it through to mass adoption and amazing product builds.
I guess the one thing to your, the reply to all of that is, I feel like the general idea from the MSP side when they see all of this is, hey, where's the innovation that actually comes after this money hits, right? It's almost the equivalent of, hey, I'm the NFL player. I finally got my contract and then my numbers went down, right? Like, how do I feel like is that vision wrong? Is that view wrong? Is that what you see?
So I think it's partially perspective, right? And I think it's the lens that you look at it at and understanding what certain organizations need to do. So in some cases, innovation continues and you don't realize it because they haven't actually announced the acquisition, right? They may announce that acquisition could be anywhere from 3 months, 6 months, or 2 years where they've owned an organization and driven innovation and drive and product build. And then the world changes a bit when they announce it, because now that the world knows that acquisition has happened, they also need to mitigate their own risk, right? And so with any smaller startups or at any stage, whether your head of engineering has cut their teeth learning for the first time or growing with an organization and developing thing, they maybe weren't enterprise class architects before, right? Now, when you're a multi-billion-dollar organization that acquires that, there's things that you have to do to harden the systems, to set and stabilize better the foundation of the underlying architecture. And that can take time because you're essentially rebuilding an airplane while it's flying and transporting guests. And so that maybe appears to be slow, but it has to be very well thought out and architected and managed so that once that period happens, and that could be 1 year, could be 2 years worth of effort, after that, they can be very right set to keep driving. And now I do think some companies maybe are better at innovation than others, or maybe not even necessarily better, but have more appetite for some of the risk that innovation brings with it. But overall, I still think the innovation continues. And even if so, it's the people that have realized an exit and people that were parts of the exit can go and have, renewed inspiration and money to finance other companies that are looking to do similar things or people with ideas.
No, that's great feedback. I think many people never thought about that, with all the transactions that have happened even over the last 3 years. Colin, how do people find you? How do they get a hold of you? Where do they find you online?
So online, any of the social media, I'm at Reality Knox. That's me. So whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of that, that's where I'm at. You can hit me on email as well at colin.knox@solarwinds.com. Always happy to have conversations, engage, and learn from others. So,
Right on. I appreciate you for coming on board. Thanks everybody for watching. This video will be available on mspinitiative.com and all of our various channels, so you can go back and rewatch. Please visit us again on Thursday and Tuesdays. Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern. We continue MSP Initiative for as long as we're still locked in behind computers and basements. So I appreciate you guys for staying tuned. And Colin, appreciate you for taking just an hour out of your day. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been awesome. Good to connect.
Cheers.
All right, thanks, George. Thanks, everybody.